Hi, it's Michael Linford, CFO of a firm, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 1076.
Tesla was organized into 5 groups that made up the FP&A. It was actually called FP&A Business Operations Team. So there was corporate FP&A. This is, I think, what most people think of as the traditional FP&A. They maintained the corporate model, took inputs from everyone else, and rolled up the 3 statements. They worked what I would say like more internal to finance, right? They faced into finance people. And then the rest of the org was actually split into 4 areas, more matching the business. So I covered manufacturing supply chain. There was another team that covered engineering. They owned the bill of material, early product design. That team also then started working on Dojo, AI, data computers, sales, marketing, and service, and then energy.
It was something of an impromptu meeting, one Gabi Gantus will likely never forget. One day at Tesla, the company's then president of Automotive, Jérôme Guillen, pulled her aside, whispering about a decision Elon Musk was leaning towards. Guillen, who had led the automaker's push for production scale and supply chain agility, believed a different path could better serve the company. Standing before Musk, Gantus walked through the cost impacts and strategic trade-offs, methodically highlighting why their plan would outperform the existing approach. Gantus recounts feeling a rush of excitement when Musk ultimately changed course, calling it a key to unlocking her future at the automaker. Our talk with Gabi Gantus begins after this. Gabi Gantus is Mytra AI's new chief financial officer, bringing more than a decade of manufacturing finance experience from Tesla, a seasoned leader in cost optimization and supply chain resilience. Gabi helped pioneer Tesla's rise to global success, some say, and is now expected to help Mytra AI's strategic growth in warehouse robotics. Gabi, welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
So, Gabi, we're excited to have you look back. A lot of interest always around Tesla, but take us back even before you landed at Tesla. Who were you? What were you up to?
Oh gosh, I was at Tesla for most of my career. So I'm born and raised in California. Decided to go east for college, tried to expand my horizons. I went to Trinity College in Connecticut. There I majored in economics and decided it would be a great idea to go into investment banking. I made my way to a small boutique firm called Berkshire Capital. It was mergers and acquisitions focused on FIG. Did that for about a year, and I decided that I did not like that for my lifestyle. The hours really do start to strain on you. Learned so much. I still credit my Excel skills to my year doing investment banking. I then made my way to a small company called Primus Asset Management, which was actually going dark at that point. This was kind of in the middle of the 2010-ish 2009 financial crisis. I graduated in 2010, and they had been selling mortgage-backed securities. And so we were winding down those portfolios. I was living in New York at the time, and I applied to a few jobs in New York when I was ready to move on, and one job in California, and that was Tesla. I flew out, did my interview, got the job, and then ended up at Tesla.
And what was the type of role? Were you a financial analyst, or what were you originally?
Yeah, I was a financial analyst in the investment bank.
And I couldn't help but I was reading one of your posts, your departure post, I think, and you mentioned that Tesla at the time was mostly dark spaces and lots of ambition. And that's the day you walked in. Tell us about that. That's a great opener, but tell us what you're getting at there.
Yeah. So when I joined Tesla, so the day actually I interviewed was the Model S first deliveries was that day. I joined about 3 months later, and Tesla was in the middle of trying to ramp the Model S. I think most people know, but maybe they don't. Tesla acquired their first plant from Toyota, which is in Fremont, California, and it was previously a NUMMI plant. A lot of very interesting podcasts and articles out there about the NUMMI plant history there. Highly recommend listening or reading about them. And it was kind of a deal between Mr. Toyota and Elon. They did a handshake agreement. Tesla bought the plant at a very steep discount with some equipment in it, and it became Tesla's. But when I joined, we were occupying a very small corner of it. We were only building Model S. And because early on and, forever as a hardware company, we were cash strapped, we didn't build out the other spaces. So other than the areas where we had the Model S manufacturing line, most of the factory was just dark spaces, no lights, sometimes like old pieces of metal left over from the NUMMI days. And it's amazing if you go now, there is not a single inch that is not used in that factory. But back then it was a different world.
Were you, it sounds like you visited the site. Were you, and I know later on you get very involved in operations. Was that the nature of what finance people did from the start? Were you very familiar with the plants from the start?
Yeah, I will say when I first joined Tesla, I was corporate FP&A. I was actually the first corporate FP&A hire that Tesla had ever done. Everyone else had specialized areas within the company. So my job was to build out the first financial forecast for the Model S, and I did that. And then I covered G&A and SMS. Sales, marketing, service. And then I switched over to manufacturing. But yeah, we always like to say that finance team at Tesla was not, and it still is not, a traditional finance team. We're told never to be ivory tower finance people. We were told our job is to be out on the floor. For 3 years, when I was covering manufacturing, I sat on the manufacturing floor alongside the other members of the finance team that covered manufacturing, the factory leadership, and all of those supporting teams. So we sat in the middle of the floor. We didn't sit behind spreadsheets all day. The expectation from both Elon and the CFOs over time, so Deepak and then Zach and then Vaibhav, was we are in the operations. To do our jobs well, we have to know what's happening. And that was a huge part of the skill sets that I was able to build while there, is really getting ingrained in the operations. I could understand the lingo. I could walk into one of these shops and know what was happening, and it allowed me to have real conversations with factory leaders about the issues they were having. I could sit there and just say, reduce your cost. You're too expensive. That doesn't really resonate with people. You need to understand what they're working on, what are their issues, for you to work with them to figure out the best outcome for both of you.
I want to point out, one of the things you've mentioned and is generally known, but there were times when it wasn't clear Tesla was going to survive. And you worked in that environment for, a dozen years. Tell us something about that. Why? You could have gone to places that were a little more even keeled and not as risky, but something about it appealed to you clearly.
So what I loved, and what I'm loving now at Mytra, is the influence that I got to have at that early stage in my career. I joined Tesla when I was 24. The work I got to do, the meetings I got to sit in, the experiences that I had, I would never get at a larger company. I could see the work that I was doing directly change things in the company, which was amazing. And it continued until the day I left. And whenever I was interviewing anyone to join Tesla, people would often ask me that same question. And that's truly the answer, is at Tesla, it really is not hierarchical, right? Everybody makes a contribution. The expectation from every team is, whether you're an entry-level person all the way to a senior vice president, everyone is expected to make meaningful contribution to the company. And when you do good work, you see that change sometimes the direction of the company, which was amazing. And it's such a great opportunity for me.
That's I can't resist asking you, you mentioned hiring into finance. What impressed you when were eager to make a hire, what is it that made the candidate stand out to you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I always wanted to make sure that they had a real interest in Tesla and they weren't just, another fanboy out there, as people like to call them, but, really understood the company, understood the challenges, knew that it was more than just coming in and being like, oh my gosh, I love the car, but understanding the challenges in the industry, the challenges Tesla would face, and how to help overcome them. I also loved looking for people that clearly had a desire to learn. I would always try to scare people when they were interviewing, saying, look, joining Tesla, the learning curve is insane. It's going to feel like you are running up a mountain and then jumping off of a cliff at the end of it. But if you can get through the learning curve, you will learn so much at Tesla in such a short amount of time. So someone eager to really absorb everything around them. And then the third piece I will just say is we always did cases. So I was a fit interview and most recently, probably for the past 5 years, but we always had candidates do at least 3 cases. Sorry, it's actually 4. And I really relied heavily on the cases because that's the best indication of if someone can do the job, how they do on these cases. We developed them over time to make sure they really represented the work that we were doing, to make sure that we were making the best hires.
Wow. So, can you give us any more characterization of one of the cases? Was it like a quality case should have these 3 characteristics or no?
Yeah, no, we were testing often Excel skills, was one, restatement models, can you understand basic financials? And then really, how are they thinking strategically? As I said before, Tesla Finance was not a traditional finance team. We didn't want someone to sit there and plug in numbers into a spreadsheet. Our expectation was that you would go work with your business partners and drive strategic discussions. Being a good finance partner and being in finance at any company is more than just a spreadsheet. It's how do you make sure that every decision that is being made has a financial viewpoint attached to it and is ending up at the right end point. Ultimately, good planning, good cross-functional syncing, discussions at the water cooler all lead to better financial outcomes. So it was really, analytical questions to try to see how they would solve a problem, because problems arise for sure.
Tesla is known for a relentless focus on, manufacturing and cost optimization. Can you describe maybe a project or something you were involved with that led or impacted Tesla's production efficiency or cost structure?
Yeah, early on, this is where it became very obvious to me many times that we were not traditional finance. We were trying to figure out what was the best shift pattern to run in our factories. There's many different kinds of shift patterns you can run in the state. It's very state by state. California has different kinds of options. They're called alternative work schedules, where you move the time that overtime begins from 8 hours a day to 10. California has 2 overtime rules. When you hit 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week, you go to overtime. An alternative work schedule. So the standard is 5 days a week, 8 hours. That's how you get your 40 hours. An alternative work schedule is different ways to achieve the same 40. So you would do 4 days a week at 10 hours. So the idea is that people vote. So people do have to opt into this and decide that they would rather come in fewer days a week and just work more hours in those days and still get no overtime. So you're moving the overtime kind of clock from 8 to 10 hours. And so at the time, we were running lots of overtime. Many times in Tesla's history, we were running lots of overtime. We were often burning out people. No one likes working 5 days a week, 12 hours, 6 days a week, 10 hours. It gets exhausting. It's manufacturing. So I was able to work with HR, our factory leadership, and really try to figure out what was the best shift pattern to run to accomplish the goals for everyone, right? Make sure we have enough running time to build all the cars we want, make sure we're not burning out people, and at the same time, getting cost reductions by getting the same number of hours for less overtime. So there was always that trade-off between more people versus overtime. And that was kind of one of the big things that I helped with pretty early on. Tesla we were learning how to make cars, how to reduce costs as we're doing it. We made mistakes along the way, no doubt. But we could very quickly decide how to improve that. And one of them was looking at different shift pattern options.
Well, wow. Wonderful. Interesting. Very interesting for us. Thank you. Some nice detail there for us, Gabi. Want to touch on supply chain resilience for you, another area Tesla is known to distinguish itself. Was there any time where you were involved in some of what of the supply chain side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's always. So I started managing supply chain finance 7-ish years ago, somewhere around there, in addition to manufacturing. One of the big strategies that Tesla was always weighing, right, was the trade-off between logistics costs, duties and tariffs versus bill of material costs, and then also carrying costs of inventory, right? So if you source something from overseas, yes, it might be cheaper on the part cost, but then you need to factor in the cost to get it to the factory. And then also exactly what you're saying, the risk of, and this happened during COVID, if shipping lanes start getting closed down or slowing down, you are then at risk of shutting down. So I was very involved in decisions about how much inventory to carry based on varying, and during, I would say, the height of COVID, one of the biggest impacts Tesla felt after everybody started reopening factories, obviously, was the increased logistics times. Shipping from China should have taken anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, and we were experiencing 7 to 10 weeks with a lot of variability in there. And so discussions were had between supply chain leadership, finance, and even the factory leadership of what was the best solution. And at that time, it was, we need to keep more inventory on hand to be able to absorb these fluctuations in shipping times. Now, one might say, wow, that's not smart financially, right? You have to pay for more warehouses, you have more cash tied up in inventory, but you also have to weigh the other side of the coin, which was shutting down the factory and not building cars was way more expensive. So these were the kinds of things that I dealt with.
Hey, e-vehicle maker Nikola made headlines this week, claimed filed for bankruptcy, I suppose. And I think if I read my business articles correctly, it was perhaps cash related. Anything from the news there surprise you, or did you see something coming? Yeah,
I think if I'm remembering, they've been in trouble for a few years now, so was not surprised to see that. But it always is cash related. Ultimately, manufacturing is a cash heavy business, and profits are great. Cash is king. You need to have enough cash to maintain your operations. I think very early on Tesla, everyone was super pumped about being profitable. But from a finance perspective, what we were most excited about was when we were cash flow positive. Because ultimately, there's a lot of GAAP accounting. There's non-cash expenses that you have to run through your financials. Cash is the most important thing. And when you are in a hardware business, every dollar matters. And that's something that was ingrained at Tesla and is forever ingrained into me. I was talking to someone earlier today about different paybacks that we had at Tesla when looking at different investments. There were times where we were looking for 6-month paybacks. We would not make an investment if we couldn't recover our cash in 6 months. It went anywhere up to 2 to 3 years, but all of that was cash was the most important. It has to be preserved. And I think people often forget that, and they sometimes get a little bit careless sometimes with their cash. And that's really what will do you in.
Again, we want to talk to you about Mytra AI, but I just want to ask about innovation in Tesla. It seems like their synonyms are, quick decision making is usually what runs through my mind when I hear innovation. And what does it mean for finance people? I think it means the same thing. It means, we have to be more responsive. We have to take on greater risks. but we have to make decisions more quickly. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, innovation, if you don't innovate, you're going to die, and you have to move fast. You have to be able to pivot fast. I think that's why Tesla has done so well, releasing cars as quickly as they do, making changes as quickly as they do. And that obviously all comes from Elon's vision, right? You have to make changes quickly and pivot. Obviously, sometimes that is expensive from the financial side. But I think that is why it's important that you understand what's happening in the business. You understand the trade-offs. It's more than just someone coming to you with a spreadsheet, but you understand what that innovation, what that pivot could mean beyond just what it might say in the spreadsheet. You know, we always say there was the obvious things when you were looking at something in a spreadsheet, but then there's the intangibles, which sometimes you can't attach a dollar amount to. Customer feedback, market buzz, all of these things really could help move other areas that would make up for any financial loss you might see from moving fast. And sometimes you make mistakes when moving fast. That's fine. You fix it, you move to the next. But I do think that how I always dealt with it was not just sitting behind the spreadsheet, but trying to understand what was happening in the business and why we had to do this quick decision or quick change.
Well, we're not done talking about Tesla. However, we want to find out about Mytra AI and this opportunity that led you to open this new chapter. Tell us about this company. What is Mytra AI about?
Absolutely. So it is software-defined warehouse robotics solutions that we use to automate really one of the most common tasks in logistics and supply chain, which is moving and storing materials. Ultimately, every company you can imagine, you can go through auto manufacturing companies, Amazons of the world, grocery stores, hardware stores, really everyone has to move things around and store them. Everybody has to touch it. And we're trying to look for a solution to automate this. If you walk into most warehouses in the United States right now, it kind of looks the same as it did, 75 years ago. Pallets being moved by a person on a forklift. And we're trying to figure out a way to automate that.
Can you give us maybe an abbreviated history of the company's capital structure?
So we came out of stealth mode in July with $78 million in total financing. That was through our Series B. Obviously now we're starting to look forward to what's next and what to do with this amazing amount of cash that we have, and how to really utilize it best and get as many big customers as we can signed up. We are in discussions with a lot of the big players. We did a proof of technology with Albertsons, which was very successful. And that's kind of where we're going right now.
Can we ask, I usually ask this before we ask you about the company, but is this your network perhaps that opened the door, or is it a recruiter, or how did you find your way finally?
Yeah.
And recruiters had come knocking before, I'm sure, but this time you said yes. Yeah.
So Chris Walty, the CEO, and I worked together at Tesla. I was his finance partner for many projects that he worked on. So he and I started discussions a bit ago, and he and I just kept talking. And yes, recruiters have definitely come knocking through the years. Why I was attracted to this company? Well, first, the space. We need an automated solution to warehousing. Warehousing is not going away. If anything, it's getting bigger. Everyone is opening more warehouses in more places. And one of the big learnings that I have from being at Tesla and working in a manufacturing and supply chain space for as long as I did was there are good workers out there. There are never enough. And it's not to say that we can automate everything, but supplementing great workers, which there are a lot of, with targeted automation could help everybody do better in the industry. So the space to me seemed definitely ripe for disruption. And, we at Tesla had tried to automate many times over the warehousing space. And some of these solutions worked with a lot of maintenance and upkeep. Some did not and got completely ripped out. A lot of our warehouses were just manual. So that was one. And the second was the people. So I really respect Chris and really enjoyed working with him at Tesla. And I loved the team that he and Ahmad had built up at Mytra. Really great resumes, people from Tesla, Rivian, Slack, all really excited. And when I went to go visit the first time, I felt the sense of urgency that exists always at Tesla. When there's a problem, there's a sense of urgency to fix it. I felt that same way at Mytra, where you weren't going to end up with some sleepy, oh, well, we'll kind of figure this out over time. Like Hive, everyone's there buzzing around trying to fix it. And when I was making my next move, I wanted to make sure I'd have the same pace that I'm used to. You build a certain tolerance to moving fast, and you kind of get used to that. I feel like anything else would be boring to me. I think those were the two, the people and the vision and the space.
And the teams, I mean, it seems like even at Tesla, you were emphasizing sort of the hiring mechanism that brought in people who are a collaborative culture. I don't know what you want to call it, but can you talk a little bit about teams and high performance teams? That's what this is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to do anything well, everybody has to be performing at the top of their game. Tesla did a really good job doing this over the entire history of the company, and Mytra is doing that again. The hiring process is really robust. A lot of people talk to the candidates to make sure that not only are they the right fit from the technical aspect, but from a collaboration standpoint. What I noticed, I'm in week 3 at Mytra. It might be week 4. I've kind of lost track because time is flying by. How collaborative everyone is and how open everyone is to work with each other. You don't sit in a room and do anything by yourself. There's no silos. And a high performing team is high performing because everyone is working together towards the same goal. And that's what I really feel like Chris and Ahmad have been building at Mytra, and I'm already seeing it myself.
Can you give us a sense, looking forward, what you expect the finance and operational milestones you hope to achieve at Mytra? What are we looking towards here?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest milestone right now, it's pilot deployments, proof of technologies, showing these customers what we can do. The biggest milestone directly in front of us is taking one of those very successful pilots and putting it into a larger warehouse, a bigger deal. And the companies that we talk to then want to duplicate it, right? They have 10 warehouses, they have 50 warehouses, they have 400. Mytra should be in all of them. So the direct, I think, in front of us is get a couple big customers signed for big warehouses, show that the market, not only likes the technology, but wants to deploy the technology, all while trying to get costs down and making sure that we're profitable while doing it.
At Tesla, you had to foster innovation while maintaining strict financial controls. How will you apply that same balance at Mytra? And I'm wondering if you've got a controller already in the wings.
We do not have a controller at this time. For me, my strategy always at Tesla, and I'm already trying to deploy the same thing at Mytra, is visibility. I would tell my team, if I go to any of your leaders or your business partners and say, what did you spend last quarter? And they said, I don't know, that's a failure on the finance team. Everyone needs to be well informed of what their spending is, what their budget is, and how they're progressing against that. It's not fair to hold people accountable if they have no visibility into what they're doing, right? Everyone is cutting purchase orders so fast, they're moving so quickly. It's hard to keep track of it. So it is the job of finance to partner with business partners and share with them their financials so that they can make better informed decisions. And my goal at Mytra and the existing finance team, which is one guy named Brian, has done a great job sharing this, but it's to continue that and then make sure there's clear goals, share what do we need to do as a company to have a successful Series C and then beyond that, and making sure everyone understands that and that everyone is pointing towards the same direction together.
Tell us something about the culture you expect, what the cultural similarities are likely to be and what might be different here from Tesla.
Well, I think one big difference that I've immediately noticed is really just actually, it's not a difference. Everyone at both companies wants the company to succeed. Single mind, everyone wants success. I think that there's two ways you can do it. I mean, Tesla is such a large company at this point. I like to say it's a large company that still acts like a startup in a lot of ways. But I think what I see at Mytra is this sense of, and my first week we had a company offsite, onsite called Fiesta. And the sense of community, everyone was so protective of wanting to keep the culture, this collaboration, this kindness towards each other, that I was almost taken aback. I'd been in such a different environment for 12 years where Tesla is so singularly focused on success, doing great work. And they're amazing people who are incredible to work with, but it's such a intense culture all the time. It's why a lot of people don't enjoy working there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was a great place to learn. It's a lot happening. And I think Mytra will get the exact same level of success, but it shows that there's a different approach to it. You can do it without having everyone feel like they are running a marathon up a mountain and then jumping off a cliff at the end. I just feel, it just feels different.
Okay, it's time for our finance strategic moment. We're asking you to look back and just share one moment, perhaps insight that you had along the way, some career experience that fell upon you. What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest insights that I picked up in my career is, and I kind of touched on this a little bit already, is staying close with the business. I've so many examples of where I didn't play a traditional finance role. I would say probably one of the most bizarre roles that I played at Tesla, and you could ask many people, I did it till I left, that I became the owner of. I owned the company's long-term manufacturing roadmap. That was not finance by any means. It kind of fell into my lap at some point because ultimately, when you look at a factory and a manufacturing facility, the longest lead time if you're building a new product often is, where are you going to build it? Do you need to buy a factory? Do you need to build a factory? Get the equipment? And so as part of my job, to do the long-term planning for finance for the manufacturing side, I need to know what we were building when. And I started consolidating all this information, working with many groups, engineering, programs, operations, and building out a roadmap. And I became the maintainer of said roadmap for Tesla. Not traditional finance, but in some ways became, it was very natural, because to do a good job with a financial forecast, ultimately that was the job of the finance team, have a great financial forecast that the company can use to make decisions off of. You need to know what's coming and make sure everyone is working towards the same goal. It's a lesson that I learned, that good decision-making helps the financials. So it might not seem like, wow, why is finance doing that? How does that help finance? But for me, having a good roadmap helped me do my job better as finance, and then bringing other people along, making sure everybody was working towards the same roadmap, poking holes in it, questioning it together, made the company do a better job of how we were thinking about long term.
Seems like you could have gone down the operations path and become a COO. Disagree with me, please.
I think that a good CFO is also a COO. Tesla still to this day does not have a COO. Zach Kirkhorn, who was the prior CFO after Deepak, was my mentor. He had my role at Tesla before I had my role, and every role I grew into, he'd had previously. He kind of was the perfect example of this. I feel like he was the CFO at Tesla. I learned so much from him. And but he didn't just do financial decisions. He helped influence the company's strategy. He worked with other executives to make the right decisions as a company. I think a good CFO is a COO in a lot of ways, because good financials is good operations. And I think Tesla's a perfect example of, you don't actually need a COO to have a COO in a lot of ways.
Do you recall, was there an instance at Tesla where you were tapped on the shoulder one day and asked to step into, it doesn't have to be the boardroom, maybe it was upper management, to present? Because, Gabi gets this. She was there. Let her show her numbers and talk about it. Or is there some memory that comes to mind when did you become, invited in to present?
Yeah, I mean, one that immediately comes to mind was, I can't share the decision, but there was a decision that was trying to be made, and our former president, Jérôme, I was very close with as well, tapped me to come just talk, me and him, with Elon, and get him to make this decision and get him to change his mind from something that what was the plan of record to what we thought might be a better plan of record. And that was kind of the beginning of, I would say, a next level journey between Jérôme and Zach. I felt very supported to rise very quickly at Tesla and have a lot of influence over the business.
Did you feel like you influenced the decision one way or the other, or you played a role?
Yes. Yeah, we got the decision changed to what Jérôme and I wanted.
Is there something outside of the professional world, an interest that you have? We always like to ask our guests something on the personal side. Is there something your colleagues might not even know about you? Something you can tell us, fill us in? Might have been an interest you had way back, might be something you pursue regularly. Don't know.
Yeah, I'm a great cook, and I bake. And a fun fact is, I've actually made 3 wedding cakes for friends. Wow. Multi-tiered.
Do they have to plan ahead of time? Do they got to make a reservation with you, or
they're close friends? So, with friends who are doing DIY weddings, or asked me to do it, and I was happy to do it. They were all 3 very close friends. So I think that's what, people often say, like, I like to cook. No, I really do like to cook and bake. Early in my time at Tesla, I had the tradition, when I left, there was 90 people on the FP&A team. When I started, I was one of 9. For everyone's birthday, I would make whatever dessert they wanted. That tradition stopped as the team got larger and larger.
Hey, you mentioned that team. I should have asked you, is there anything unusual the way it was organized? Did Tesla organize FP&A a little differently? Did it have a different mindset about what an FP&A professional is and isn't?
Yeah, I think, Tesla was organized into 5 groups that made up the FP&A. Was actually called FP&A Business Operations Team. So there was corporate FP&A. This is, I think, what most people think of as the traditional FP&A. They maintained the corporate model, took inputs from everyone else, and rolled up the 3 statements. They worked, what I would say, like more internal to finance, right? They faced into finance people. And then the rest of the org was actually split into 4 areas, more matching the business. So I covered manufacturing supply chain. There was another team that covered engineering. They owned the bill of material, early product design. That team also then started working on Dojo, AI, data computers, all of that fun stuff, sales, marketing, and service, and then energy. And then energy was a little unique because it more was focused on the revenue side. The engineering and the manufacturing side covered the costs. So it's not traditional in the sense that very little time was spent just like dealing with a spreadsheet. And it was really more partnering with business partners to help them make better decisions, well-informed decisions, with finance as a partner. We always like to view ourselves as a partner. And this is still my goal at Mytra. No one should ever feel upset when finance walks in the room or try to hide things. Finance should always be a supporter of their business partners. I always used to joke that I will push on you harder in the background than anyone else, so that when I go and have to make an argument to the CFO why they should allow this spend, I can say, I've already pushed on this. We should approve this. And that's kind of always the good balance to have.
Well, great insight for us. Thank you, Gabi. We always, for whatever reason, always ask, I don't know if you have a book suggestion for us or something you escape with, or I don't know if you have time to read. What would you
I
tell
have
me?
a 10-month-old, and
Oh my gosh.
that is,
Congratulations. Wow.
thank you. I don't really have time to read right now. It's a new job and the baby and my husband, and yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, congratulations. Hey, we're up to our final question, which is where we ask you to look forward. And what we like to do is just ask for your priorities as a CFO for the coming 12 months. What would those priorities be?
Absolutely. So, making sure we understand our unit costs. How much does it cost to build what we're building? And then making a trajectory to reduce that cost. Early build is always going to be expensive. It's unavoidable, but having a clear path on how you're going to reduce those costs is key, especially when you're talking to investors. And then I would say the next one is obviously making sure that we have different deal structure types so we can sign up different kinds of customers. Not every customer will want the same structure. So making sure that finance can support whatever sales needs to sign contracts. Until the ink is dry, we won't be happy.
Gabi Gantus, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you.